There's no way. Price is going to drop. That's it. And then all of a sudden January, 2nd to 4th hit, whatever that first Monday is back. And they're like, holy shit, the bubble's here. And why did all those guys get those prices in October and I can't get them today? I'm like, well, you didn't have the kahunas to pull the trigger. This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy, giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate. We cover market trends, news, and give you the honest answers that will keep you ahead of the real estate game. Okay, so today we are talking about the good old question, do I rent or do I buy? We're kind of getting into this because it's been a big question we've been getting lately, especially with rates and everything going up. So we're knocking out a bunch of questions that people had on this, a lot of questions our clients asked us, a lot of ones that just people in the group had, and what their clients are saying. So first one is, what are the major benefits of renting? Major benefit of renting is just freedom, pure and utter freedom. You have no ties to that place. If you hate it, less than a year later, you'll be out of there. That is the one and only benefit that you have to rent, is that you have the freedom with no expenses, no problems, no questions, no ties to that property. You have the freedom to do what you want once your lease is up. Why do some people prefer to buy? Some people prefer to buy because you have financial, it's just like another financial asset. It's another road to get wealthy. Like instead of spending $2,500 a month on a one bedroom to rent, at the end of those 12 months, that money is gone. Like you will never see that money back again. It is 1,000% out. That was your cost to live there. If you bought a place and you may, honestly, instead of spending $2,500 a month, you might be able to have a mortgage with everything for $2,200 a month. You might be able to, you'll definitely be able to have money coming back to you. You're actually putting money into an asset rather than just putting money towards somebody else to get rich. And that's why a lot of people prefer to buy, because they're like, hey, I could do what I want with my place. It's mine. I'll build some wealth. You get some tax benefits. And it's just kind of like nice that you have that. What are some of the biggest challenges going from renting to buying? A lot of people get nervous about the financial commitment. I'd say that's hands down the biggest challenge is for renters, is that they financially can't commit. They're just too scared. And I always say a lot of times, especially like towards the end of like April, we have a lot of renters that are posing as buyers. They want to be able to tell people they're going to buy. They want to brag to some girl that they're looking to buy. They think it's cool, but they just don't have the stomach to actually be a buyer. We actually have a saying in our office. We're like, these guys, like if we meet somebody new for the first time, we'll be like, this guy's a buyer. Like they're buyers. They're going to buy. And we have a lot of times when we meet people, we're like, yep, definitely renters. You just know. We've been doing this long enough that I mean, I would say 1 out of 50 times we're wrong on that. You could just tell the mentality, just kind of like the way they act, the questions they ask, if they'll ever commit to buying pretty quickly. We do not judge though. We will give everybody some chances to see if they turn into buyers, but it's pretty easy to tell renters from buyers. Are renters typically first-time buyers? A lot of times they are, or a lot of times renters are people who are relocating from out of state. Like let's say you're moving from Los Angeles to Chicago and you've never ever been to Chicago before. Like you got transferred and you're coming here. You don't know what a River North or Lincoln Park is. And you're like, I don't really want to commit to buying a place when I don't know what it is. Or I've seen a lot of older people renting lately. And people are like, but those people are always buyers. Well, here's the thing. They may be, selling their place in Hinsdale and they want to get a place downtown. I'm like, listen, I don't know if I want to live down. Maybe I don't like River North. Like, I think I might like River North, but I'm not positive. So they rent for a year. And they see. And then if they like it, they'll commit to buying. So it's not always first-time buyers that are renters. Is it a better financial decision long-term to rent or buy? I personally don't even think this is a question. I think if you're actually going to live here, no matter what, for more than 2 years, I think it makes absolutely no sense to rent. Like, I don't understand why people do it. I know that sometimes you can lose money, but I know for a fact that if I rent, I lose money. I own a lot of real estate, and I'll tell you, like, I'm not gonna say I could retire off the money, but like I make a good chunk of income a month just from people renting. I don't do anything. I do nothing. I have a place. You need a place to stay? You pay me to stay there. I look at these kids and I'm like, why are you renting when you can own this for cheaper? I mean, I just rented one of my one bedrooms because rents are 25% higher than history. I rented it for $2,500 a month. Like, I think my all-in cost on that place, now I paid it down a lot, is like $1,500. Like, this, for what? And I looked at the guy that's renting, and I had like 10 applications. So like, I don't know financially why anybody would ever rent if you're gonna be here for a while and you're sure of where you wanna live and like you got job security. I don't know why you would ever rent over buying. Now, the biggest thing that a lot of people say is like, well, hey, values are stagnant if you buy in Chicago, which is true. We go up like 0 to 3% a year. Our taxes are high. There's a lot of unknowns, yada, yada, yada. That's true. I mean, everything there is 100% true. But the reality is, I think that majority of the time, if you bought and you sold, let's say 7 years later, and if you just rented 7 years, if you looked at how much you spent and what you would save, I think that you would win probably like 9 times out of 10 by buying rather than renting. Is there every now and then where it probably wasn't the best decision? Sure. You bought in a building, turned out to be like a money pit, or you you go to sell and it's a pandemic and nobody's living in the city, or the entire economy collapsed and the stock market's at 0. Sure, these are drastic decisions, but on a normal basic system and the world is equal, all things bar none, I think it's a much better decision financially to buy than it is to rent. Is it cheaper to rent or buy? It depends. You want one of these brand new luxury high-rise buildings, way cheaper to buy than it is to rent. You want like a studio, like crappy, super old place in the Gold Coast or something like that. I'm not saying the Gold Coast bad. I'm saying like just like one of these like super old ones. Like it's cheaper to rent than buy. Honestly, all things created equal. Like I look at a lot of places around like $300,000. Like your all-in cost if you buy it compared to if you renting it, like especially today with rents being 25% higher than history, is that like it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent, even with rates where they're at today. I'm not saying it's substantially cheaper to buy. It's usually like right around like the same price or slightly less to buy than rent. That's why I think it is. Now, if this is like New York, where like it's $4,000 a month if you bought it, and it's $2,000 to rent that same type of place. Like I could see why some people might hesitate on it, but then again, New York appreciates way more than Chicago. But it is technically like cheaper to buy in most parts of the city than it is to rent. How are rental prices in Chicago compared to other big cities in the U.S.? I mean, like our rental prices compared to like what people make on an income level are very high, especially this year. You got to remember, like in 2020, rents were down 20%. Today, they're up 25%. So in reality, the way I look at it is like we're really up like 5% because we lost 20, gained 25, et cetera. But I mean, like we're a very, very strong rental market price-wise, like extremely strong. Do you need a realtor if you're renting? I mean, you don't need a realtor if you're buying. You can rent on your own. I mean, honestly, like I think you'll do better if you have somebody to help you guide the way, because like, again, there's certain things about buildings you may or may not know, but like you don't need anybody. I always think it's intelligent to use somebody if you're going to be spending a lot of money, especially if you're going to be committing a year to a place, but you definitely don't need it. What are the major changes between renting from an individual owner versus a larger building development? So let's use like an individual as an example. Like if you rent off John Smith, the nice thing is that typically an individual building is going to be far cheaper. Even if you just rent like a unit in a high rise that's owned by a guy like myself, right? So like, but you rent off John Smith in a regular building, it's going to be substantially cheaper, okay? And the downside mostly with an individual though is like, if that individual maybe isn't that attentive to you, maybe they don't get everything that you need. Maybe you need like a light bulb change and they take 2 weeks to get it for you, or they live in Texas and they're just kind of like an absentee landlord. So maybe that's a bad thing. Now, on the flip side, maybe that landlord, that's an individual, this is his only rental, and like he just likes being a landlord, and he's super responsive. And it's kind of like going to like a really high-end like, B&B, where they're just like super nice and always on the ball. So like you do get a little bit more personalized attention if it's an individual, but then again, the bad side of the individual is like if he's this absentee landlord, it could be terrible. Now on a large building, the upside is that they have like on-site staff, maintenance, etc. So like you called on the front desk and you're like, hey, I need XYZ fixed, like within 2 hours, they're up there for you fixing this. So that's the upside. And also larger, big, brand new developments have great amenities. Downside is, what if they actually don't have good staff or service, right? So like, you know, in general, the rule should be is that they could be up there in two days, but they take 2 weeks. And every single time they fix it, the day later, it breaks again. And it's just crap construction. So that's the downside. So I think there's ups and downs with individual versus kind of like, let's call them big box corporations. But the reality is that, like, you know, you got to try to like vet them out and try to make sure that like you'll find the best fit for what you're looking for. How long does the buying process usually take? On average, it takes about 45 days to close. Most of our clients, if they take this seriously, they'll find and identify a property within 21 days, okay? So, you know, let's call it like 65 to 70 days from start to finish. I'd say like, if you need a little bit more time, you could do it within 3 months, which is 90 days. Now, I have some clients that have been looking for a year. I have some clients that are looking for 5 years. I have some clients that bought the first place they walk into and did a 15-day close. But I would say on average, you know, like anywhere from like, let's call it 65 to 90 days is pretty easy to, you know, identify and close on something. Can renting with pets in the city be a challenge? No. I mean, Chicago's like a super rent-friendly city. So, I mean, I'd say it's like pretty easy. I mean, now if you get like a restricted breed, okay, like that's tough. Or like, I don't know, you get like an exotic animal, yeah. But I mean, like a basic dog or cat, like it's not even an issue. Why are people always arguing about whether renting or buying is better? Because people are super adamant. Like, my people who are renters and like renters for life think people who buy are stupid. Honestly, like, I just don't think they're as financially savvy. They tell me they make more money in the S&P and blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you, like, well, look at the S&P today, guys. How well is that S&P going? And I'll tell you, real estate, as much as people are talking about like this whole like bubble thing, our markets didn't really go up. So we're not anywhere near a crash. So, you know, real estate, you know, a lot of times will outperform the S&P. Now, in Chicago, that's not always the case due to the fact that, you know, we just have a slower appreciation. We have higher taxes. But I will tell you that I think that if you want to be you know, a wealthy person, or what I would call a well-rounded financial person, like, and have like good, you know, have your money work for you in the right way, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So like if you put all your money in Bitcoin, you're not doing too well today, okay? You put all your money in the S&P, you're not doing too well today, you know? So like if you have money in S&P, stocks, bonds, real estate, etc., and you have a lot of different vehicles on the ground, if one vehicle kind of falls behind a little bit, the other vehicles that are on the ground are going to pick up, because usually one's still performing very well. So the reality is that like you should look at real estate as just another vehicle to wealth, and that it is a good financial decision. But a lot of renters, when they argue like why renting is better than buying, is that they don't see that. They only see, they're always like, to me, like for life renters are people who always are like go big or go home type people. They think like they're always looking for that get rich quick type thing. There's always a next big thing. They're probably like more like their entire life savings are bet on NFTs right now or something like that. And you just can't change their minds. And you know what? Maybe they're right. I think it's foolish to rent over buying. But, you know, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion. Okay? I'm not here to tell you why I'm right and you're wrong. I could give you my opinion, and, you know, you could do with it what you will. What do you see typically drive whether a client decides to buy or rent? Honestly, it's going to come down to monetary needs. Like, I get a lot of people who are like, hey, I want a 2-bed, 2-bath, River North. God, want to spend around $250,000 to $300,000. I need parking and an in-unit washer dryer. And I'm like, okay. I mean, if you find one of those, I mean, I'll buy it too. Like, I want to get rich quick as well. You know, so like, those are people like, there are some renters with like completely unrealistic expectations of what prices go for. Like, it doesn't even make sense. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't exist. And like, well, my buddy bought one. I'm like, okay, like, where is it? And then it ends up being like the guy bought like in like Oak Park. I'm like, okay, well, that's not River North, okay. But that's one thing. And then the other thing that drives people to rent is that like they just like I was saying earlier, they just don't have the stomach to buy. They just get too scared that pull the trigger. They're nervous Nellies. They're the world's gonna end people. They think that it's buying high. So like I have clients I'll work with for a year, and the front half of the year they're like, hey, we're in a bubble. The market's way too hot. I'm gonna wait. Summer hits. We're in summer right now, guys. Okay, and the market's kind of like softer. It's not even balanced yet. It's still a slight edge to seller in most parts. And now I'm like, hey, you thought we were in a bubble earlier. Well, here we go. Like now's your time to get a deal. And like, I don't know, like I still think it's gonna drop more. And then the fall's gonna hit and early winter, which is pretty much September till December. And I'm like, okay, now we're in the buyer's market. So anything that's left, now inventory at this time kind of feels like Nordstrom Rack, but anything's left, I'm like, it's on sale. Okay, everything's on sale, so let's buy something now. Like, the world's gonna end. There's no way. Prices are gonna drop. That's it. And then all of a sudden January, 2nd to 4th hit, whatever that first Monday is back, and they're like, holy shit, the bubble's here. And why did all those guys get those prices in October and I can't get them today? I'm like, well, you didn't have the kahunas to pull the trigger. So it's like, that's the people who typically, that's your typical renter, to be honest with you. And that's why we call them like, this guy's a buyer or this guy's a renter. Like, it's a renter. A lot of people decide to buy. So the other flip side of this, what's the drive to buy is like, they're like, hey, I'm sick of renting. I'm sick of somebody else getting rich off my cash. I'm sick and tired of not putting my own money towards something. You get a tiny tax write-off with your taxes and stuff like that. They just want to have another vehicle on the ground to get wealthy. And they just want their own place. They want their place. John Smith wants John's place. He wants to be able to paint it if he wants to do it. He wants to be able to remodel if he wants to. He doesn't want to have to ask somebody else permission to do stuff. So those are two different types of people about the drive between renting or buying. What do you typically drive, whether a client's, are rent-to-own situations common? No, not in the city. Rent-to-owns were like really big when the bubble burst, but like, actually, I do have one rent-to-own right now. It's the first one I've probably done in like 10 years, but they're really not common in these markets. What are the biggest challenges that come with renting? I mean, not owning your own place, like literally getting zeroed out. This is why I've actually never rented in my adult life. Like I rented when I went to college, like a not a dorm, but like something close to the dorms. But when I graduated college, I actually didn't. I lived at home till I was 27 years old. It's true. I lived at home till I was 27, and the reason I did that is because first off, I didn't have any money when I graduated, and then I was trying to start this thing in real estate, and it was a terrible market. And every dollar I had, I looked at it, said, okay, I can either take my money and put it towards renting downtown to tell my buddies I'm cool and, meet girls and tell them like I got a sick rental. Or I looked at it and said, do I want to be a businessman and be like this great real estate agent that I, aspired to try to become? And I said, instead of taking my money towards a cool rental, I took my money and put it towards the business, and every dollar I made, I put it towards the business rather than taking my money and putting it towards rental. Now, I was blessed with the opportunity that I had parents that have a house. Okay, I know not everybody's in that situation, but I was fortunate enough to have that, so I did that. But that's why I never understood why people take that money and just blow it towards rent, because like if you do have options and you're going to be here and you have the monetary needs to be able to buy, I just don't get the point of renting. Let's see here. Do most leases start at a similar time of the year? So Chicago is the most rent-heavy city in the country per capita, and most people's leases come due end of March, April, May, first part of June. Okay, that's most. Then there's another big wave in July and August. But I'm saying the bulk of these are then. So the problem is like if you get on like a rent cycle and you're a landlord and you got to rent it out in like October, November, December, the pool is lower. Now listen, guys, we're in a big city. We're the third largest city in America. So there's always people buying and renting. Okay, always. I'm just saying like it's like if we're going to the casino, what are my odds? My odds are greater of getting a better price from a landlord during prime season, and my odds are greater if I'm a renter of getting a better deal in off season. So there is like an off and an on season. Is month-to-month renting more expensive? Yes, because you're a bigger risk, and most landlords don't want to be put out. Because if you're like, hey, I want to rent month-to-month, and then you give that landlord 30-day notice that you're going to move out, guess what? That landlord's screwed. So like he's going to lose a month rent because it's going to take him another month to rent somebody, and he's going to have a vacancy. So for people to understand, again, it's like a math problem. If you have a place vacant for 30 days, somebody's got to pay the tax assessments and possible mortgage. So because of that risk, that landlord's going to put that risk money back on you. So essentially, like, he'll recoup most of that money if you do kind of bail on him. Are renters surprised by costs once they start the buying process? A lot of them are. I mean, honestly, like, if you don't, another reason why people rent, I didn't mention this, they just don't have the money. They don't have the financial means. They either just didn't save well. That's usually the biggest one. Like, I'll find guys that are like making $250 a year. They don't have a dollar to their name, and they're spenders. They're Instagram rich, meaning that they're just like out there getting bottle service, driving a super expensive car that they can't afford. They rented a place for too much, or on vacation every weekend at some exotic place, and they don't have a pot to piss in. But the reality is that, like, they then get the cost and they brag about how rich they are, and they pull up in their, Maseratis, and they're so cool. And then, they're like, what? $8,000 in closing costs. I'm like, what? I'm like, well, what's $8,000, right? I mean, driving a $150,000 car. I mean, you tell me how rich you are. You're just in, Paris, and then you went to Amsterdam, and then you're going to a safari trip next week. So that's like $8,000's like nothing. And then they start complaining about, like, wow, these are a lot of costs. So that's a big thing we see with renters. Now, there's other people who don't make as much money at all, and they just don't have job security and just didn't get the right end of the stick on it. And those people are different. Like, they just weren't ever in a financial position. Okay, so they're kind of like two different sides. It's like people who just never had the opportunity, and some people who had the opportunity and wasted it. So that's usually why people kind of get a little bit what I call starstruck a little bit when they or shelter shocks when they find, or sticker shock is what I'm looking for. Sticker shock when they get the price. But those are the people I know just don't have the stomach to do it because they've either didn't save correctly, or they're just not financially in the position to do it. Are renters responsible for monthly assessments? No, not at all. That's a landlord job. When you factor in home maintenance and assessments, is renting actually cheaper than owning? No. When you take a look at, like, if you want to look, and I tell this to all my clients who are like, hey, I'm going to rent my place out, like, I'm going to make a ton of money. I'm like, all right, well, it's a math problem, right? Like, look at, what your taxes are, what your assessments are, what your mortgage is, okay? What your overhead cost is going to be to maintain that property. And then let's say that's $2,000. Are you able to get, at least like $2,000 back, right? To at least break even. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But, like, the reality is if, like, you take that number and you're like, okay, you can make it costs you $2,000. If you went to rent for that same price, for that $2,000, can you get a place as nice or slightly better for the same price? And a lot of times the answer is you can't. How does lifestyle factor into the rent versus buy decision? Again, renters want more financial freedom in that they're not tied down to a property. They also tend to be, just being honest, they tend to be people who just aren't as, I see most of my renter clients not save like they should. They tend to spend it more. They're more show me clients. And honestly, it's just from my experience of who I've met. Now, that doesn't mean somebody out there is watching this and be like, that's really rude to kind of like say everybody's like that. I'm saying a lot of renters in the markets I work, they tend to be younger guys or girls, and they just spend, exotic vacations, expensive cars, etc. And it just seems like they're just not financially, fiscally responsible with their cash. But that's kind of like why I think the lifestyle for renters versus the lifestyle versus buyers is a little bit different. I tend to see my buyer clients be a little bit more conservative with their cash, and they kind of want to start building wealth and putting equity into something, and that's why they become buyers. And I think that's a big lifestyle decision. And listen, I'm not hating on you if you're a person that doesn't like to save and you want to live for today. I know a lot of people like that. Most of my family's like that, minus my own immediate side. So, like, I get it. I'm just saying that, like, it's a different lifestyle from renters to buyers. How much you think the American dream factors in people wanting to buy? I think it's actually a huge factor. I think a lot of people, maybe not as much in a city like we're in, but like middle America, suburbs, small, more conservative towns, it's kind of like they're kind of brought up to being like, like owning your own dirt, putting like, that stake in the ground and having like a place to call your own is pretty much the ultimate dream to have. And a lot of people see that, and I honestly think that'll never go away. Maybe in big cities you don't have that because maybe you don't have that the culture of like more like quote unquote like small town thinking. But I think the American dream is always gonna be a big factor in most of America. You remember, America is mostly made up of like smaller towns. I mean, there's only like, you know, a few like huge cities that definitely have like huge people, but like, you know, most people kind of live in like these smaller towns. Are you throwing money away every month if you rent? I think so. That's my personal opinion. Everybody's right to their own opinion. I think it's not the best use of your cash. But if you are not sure where you want to live, financially you can't afford a property, or you're not going to live here for more than 2 years, then I don't think it's a bad idea to rent. But if you're going to be here for 5 years and you're financially secure and you got a good job, I'd buy every single second. Is it hard to get in the right school districts if you're renting? Yeah, I mean, that's not really a big thing where we sell, because most of the people that are renting are in like bigger buildings, and like schools aren't really a thing, and we're in the city. I can imagine if you're in the suburb and you want to rent a place, but like I don't really know too many people that rent that much in like suburb houses. But I'm sure the rents are higher in better quality school districts. What are the main reasons you see clients choose not to buy? We've kind of talked about that. Should clients consult with their financial advisor when deciding to rent or buy? Yeah, I think if you have financial means, and you do actually have a financial advisor, a wealth advisor, somebody like that, I never think it's a bad idea to say, hey, am I being stupid with my money? The problem I have with it, though, is that financial advisors are kind of like realtors, right? There's 26,000 realtors in the Chicago downtown markets, okay? 26,000. There's 250 realtors that do any business. The number 250 realtor will finish around $5 million closing sales. That's the number 250, okay? Now remember, there's 26,000 realtors in Chicago. The number one person will do over $300 million, okay? Like, we're on pace to do 350 this year. So you're gonna tell me somebody like myself that's possibly do 350 million in 1 year, and the guy that's number 250 that's doing 5 million a year, that we're mentally on the same page of who knows more what's happening in the marketplace. Like, it's not even close. Like, I forget more in a day than what that person's going to know in their lifetime. Okay, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but the reason I'm using this as an example is because just like there's 26,000 people out there that are realtors in Chicago, there's way more than that are financial advisors. And the majority of these people that are renting, their financial advisor is like a guy that's fresh out of college working at Northwestern Mutual, and the guy who rents can't even afford a car, and he's the one that's going to for financial advice. And that's what makes me mad, is that I'll get a lot of my clients be like, well, my financial advisor told me that it's not a good decision to buy because the market's too hot. I'm like, okay, well, we're in River North and prices dropped 20%. Where's your financial advisor? He's in Florida. You know, and I gave this example on a podcast the other day. That guy in Florida who just graduated college doesn't know shit about what's happening in the market. The other problem I have with financial advisors, and if you're watching this, I'm not trying to be too offensive to you, but like, I get financial advisors telling me what to do with our money, right? I get these guys calls all the time. I'm like, okay, what kind of car are you driving? How expensive is this place you live in, right? You got a $10 million property, you got a couple Lambos in the garage, you know, and you got like a shit ton of cash in the bank, you might know what you're doing, okay? But I got a guy that's calling me up who doesn't have a pot to piss in. They got no money in the bank. They're renting, and you're going to tell me how to manage my money? Like, don't you think that's messed up? Like, a guy that doesn't have any money and has no idea how to manage money is going to tell you what to do with your money. Doesn't make sense to me. Literally, it makes like negative sense to me. So the problem is, if you do go to your financial advisor, if you're using a financial advisor that's fresh out of college with no experience, then I would say that they're probably not the best people to go to. Now, if you got a financial advisor that does very well, or they're a wealth manager, and you know, they're flying private jets, and they've got a good experience and head on their shoulders, then yeah, those are good people to bounce ideas off. It's just be careful who you ask advice from, because not everybody knows what they're talking about. Can you change the design of rentals? No, you can't change anything inside. What financial costs should homeowners be prepared for in addition to their mortgage payments? Taxes, assessments, utility costs, and then you should also prepare for things that are going to break. You know, stuff breaks, happens. You know, that's another thing that renters don't like. They don't like the unknown. They don't like that the furnace can go out. They don't like that your roof can go out. They don't like that if you buy in a building, you can have a special assessment. There's other costs. How can homeownership be a tool to build wealth? I mean, like, I don't know, look at Florida. If You bought in Florida in 2019, you bought a house for $1 million. I've heard of people selling these things for $6 million. It's a $5 million profit, okay? Imagine if you rented and you watch your buddy buy that place. You have financial means to buy $1 million place, and they could have just made $5 million. Some of the richest people in the world are real estate investors. It's a true story, guys. A lot of them are. And I've used this example in the past with new construction, but people will buy new construction before it breaks ground. Look at 9 Walton. Like, people were buying that for like $2 million, and then after the first resales came up at like $4 million. This made $2 million. Now there's other examples where you could lose $2 million on places like that, right? But like there's a million examples I could use you where people make money off real estate. I mean, like most, especially in other cities, like people are going up like 20-30% a year. Now Chicago's more like an annuity investment. That's the way I would look at it. Slow and steady growth, nothing sexy about it, but decent return. But there's definitely a way to make money off it. Or you could rent places out. Like, I get a lot of buddies. They buy a bunch of rentals properties. They make, $15,000 to $20,000 a month just off passive income from rentals. That's other good things. Or you can buy a place, and let's say for $350, and you use it, and then when it's all paid off, let's say you have a kid that's going to college, you sell the property, you take the money, and not only did you have money coming in all the time, you take the money and pay for your kid's college education. It's like a college fund, So there's a million different things that I can give you an example for is how you can build wealth with real estate. Do you think first-time homeowners are usually prepared for what they're getting into? Yes and no. I mean, some people just click on Redfin or Zillow and they buy a place and like, I don't know what happened. And those are a lot of people who like hate it. But if you work with an experienced agent, I'm not just saying just me. I mean, there's 250 good ones out there in the city, as we mentioned. Talk to somebody, have them walk you through the process. Understand the terminology, things to watch out for, etc. And I think at that point, like it could be a good thing to have a better understanding of how it works. Are there tax benefits to owning or renting? I mean, you don't get any tax benefits for renting, but if you own, like you can write off the interest on your mortgage, you can write off your taxes up to $10,000. But there's, it's not a huge tax benefit, but it's there. If you're a real estate agent, you get even better tax write-off, but that's there. Who handles repairs and maintenance rentals? The building does. What's the worst piece of advice you heard for someone giving about renting versus buying? I hear a lot of people saying that like when you buy, you're going to lose money because the market's going to drop and the world's going to end, and that like it's way cheaper to rent, and that you always make money off renting and you'll never make money off buying. I'm like, well, how are you making money off renting? How? And like, well, technically, like you don't lose money. I'm like, okay, but how do you make money? And then there's silence. And it drives me crazy. It's the same saying I hear all the time. It's the same people I meet, where I'll meet them for the first time at a property and they'll tell me about like why realtors are losers and I'm a scumbag and I shouldn't deserve to have a job and renting's the coolest thing in the world. And I'm always like, what are we doing here? Why'd you come here? Just like make fun of me? But that's the argument I hear all the time. And it literally drives me crazy. And when I say this out loud, you may think like that doesn't happen. I don't know, probably 2 to 3 times a day. Like I'll get somebody call me and tell me that, like literally. Like, and if I pulled the office here, they probably, between all the other people, they probably hear it once a day. This is a big thing. That's why we're even doing this. I'm annoyed lately from how many people with rents being hot telling me about like how it's smarter to rent than buy. How do you advise clients on renting versus buying? I've said it a million times, I'll say it again. If you want financial freedom and you're gonna live here for less than 2 years, I would rent. If you have the cash, the means, the financial ability, and a job security, and you're gonna be here for more than 2 years, it literally makes 0 sense in my mind to rent over buy, because I think 9 times out of 10, maybe even more, that you will always make more money than if you buy rather than you rent. That's it, guys. Thanks for listening to Laricy Live.